Hey everyone, this is Kaycee Lai, founder and CEO of Promethium, and we're going to talk about next generation data catalogs using generative AI, and specifically, we're going to talk about how the data catalog probably needs to change its approach when it comes to the age of AI and natural language processing. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. So a little bit about me. So before this, I was actually the president and CEO of a data catalog company called Waterline Data. So it was one of the first data catalogs to focus on big data. So that's where I got a lot of exposure into kind of how the challenges of data catalogs are when it comes to adoption. And that's where I really, as Wayne said earlier, I really gravitated towards self-service. Because I really wanted to make that journey just a lot easier for people. So we're going to take a look at a little bit about Promethium. Promethium was founded in 2018 as I left Waterline, and we've been very fortunate to be recognized by numerous publications, won a number of awards, such as CDO magazine's Product of the Year, actually winning the Cody Award for 2022. And so the reason why we exist is we really wanted to make analytics simple. And what we found was that analytics was not simple. There were a lot of parts and pieces, a lot of people had to be involved. Finding the data was always difficult. Getting access to the data was difficult, and then building it became more difficult with more and more people needing to know how to code. And so these are some of the statistics that just really overwhelmed us as a company when we saw these market trends. And unfortunately, we see that it's not getting better, right? So everyone knows about, yes, data is growing more and more, but there's also more data sources than ever before, right? There's a new database coming up, a new data warehouse, new data lake. And so trying to do the old way of having to move the data ETL becomes very difficult. And then trying to piece together all those different complex products, catalogs, prep tools, different virtualization tools, different BI tools, also very complex. And then how do you get someone that actually knows how to use all those tools, right? So this is really why we designed Promethium for this true end-to-end self-service capability where you can leverage the power, right, of data discovery. Wayne talked about our heritage being strong in data cataloging. And so imagine if you had all that great curated data from your data catalog, but then could use active metadata to then make it easy to actually access the data using data virtualization to actually see the data, run the queries, and then being able to deliver an easy, orchestrated end-to-end self-service that goes all the way through to visualization. Right? And that's where the simplicity piece comes in. And if you talk to a lot of our customers, I think you'll definitely hear that simplicity is really what Promethium really focuses on, right? And so what we wanted to do was, help customers, simplify their workflow, right? Today, if people need to, try to answer a new question, they got to go find the data, they have to find a way to access it. Someone then needs to move the data somewhere, then someone needs to transform it, then you need to build a data set and then query it. And then, step 8 is really, the first time a business user can actually consume it. And if it's right, great. But if it's wrong, you have to go back to the beginning and figure out where it is, where you went wrong and how to fix it. And this is where we felt like, wow, this is just way too complex, right? It takes too long. And so if you have a great catalog, that already has, where all the data is, what's good, what's bad, who likes it, and so forth. Being able to then apply the automation and data virtualization techniques to say, well, what if we can actually show you the data? What if we can actually build the data for you without having to do the ETL first, and then give you the output for you to consume in a matter of minutes? What would that do? Or how would that change the experience, right? And that's where Promethium really focused on. And as we started seeing, generative AI come into play, this has become a bigger and bigger, priority for a lot of organizations. Because now with generative AI, with OpenAI, ChatGPT really opened our eyes to, oh my gosh, a regular business user who doesn't know code can actually ask, ChatGPT, write me a SQL query for this, and boom, you have it, right? And so it's really driven this wave of further automation. And there's something like 800 new generative AI startups that have launched. It's probably more than that. My data was, dated back in March, so it's probably, a couple thousand by now, right? And the reason is because this enthusiasm for natural self-service can actually really be fulfilled now with generative AI, because it can answer a lot of things for you very quickly and interactively. I think that's the key difference, right? Whereas, there's tools that can, very quickly search and find things for you. And maybe it finds a list of things for you, and then you'll still have to go through and pick the best one or the one that you want. I think what makes generative AI very usable, if you will, is that it automatically picks the right one for you, right? And then it lets you interact and say, this is not the one I want, can you pick a better one? And so this is really kind of is what we believe is driving this enthusiasm. But, right, I think this is where you need to temper that enthusiasm with some reality, right? As we've talked about in a panel before, right? So, behind the generative AI is a large language model, LLM. And an LLM is not a data catalog. An LLM is not a database. So it's not a query engine. So it actually doesn't have the ability to access data unless you give it, right? It can't actually run the queries. And so if it can't actually run the queries, it won't actually know if the SQL query you generate is actually even accurate, right? So those are some of the problems we see. But more fundamentally than that, from a catalog perspective, an LLM is not going to know about the tags that you've created. It's not going to know about lineage. It's not going to know about all the voting that you've already done for your data. And it's not going to know if something's used more than others, the popularity, of certain data assets. And so the reason why we call this out is because this is a challenge for LLMs, that in your environment, it's never going to know how to pick the right data. And it's never going to be able to actually generate the right and accurate results for enterprise analytics usage. So that's kind of the big gotcha, right? Of trying to adopt generative AI or LLM within your internal enterprise analytics environment. But at the same time, we think data catalogs also need to change, right? Because traditional cataloging has always been focused on organizing data, governance, it's metadata focus. And as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, that's not enough for generative AI, right? And so what we really need to do is find a way to bring these together, right? Take a look at what the LLMs are missing, but what they're good at, right? They're good at the natural language piece, and figure out how do you give, this ability to this missing gap of abilities to the LLM so that it can actually be combined to deliver a seamless experience. And this is something that Promethium actually has been working on for quite some time, right? So even before the advent or the popularity of Gen AI, we've already built our products where you have that strong foundation of a catalog of all the metadata that you've built from your catalog, and you generated from all your different data sources. And with that, providing the active metadata to then combine with the data virtualization capabilities, so that way you can access the data without moving the data, right? So it's not enough to just see the metadata and descriptions. You also want to see what the actual data means. You actually want to see, well, if this is the right data set, show me the results. Or what I like the most in discovery, which is, well, I'm not sure what I want. Can I build it, right? Can I combine these two data sets? Combine these tables and build a new data set, right? And this is where that build assembly capability from Promethium is super popular. And then the intelligence layer, right? And this is where, we can use natural language to help you generate a query, to generate a data set, or use AI to help you select the data, right? So if I search for sales, there might be 30,000 tables called sales. Which is the right one? Did I mean sales in a column? Did I mean sales in a table, right? Which is a better one? Should I suggest? Should I pick? And then if I have some esoteric column names, what does it mean? How do I figure that out, right? So this is really kind of where, what Promethium's good at. And of course, you can't do this without proper governance, right? So you have to have access control, SSO, masking, encryption, all these things to make it truly enterprise. And so it was really natural for us to incorporate LLM into our architecture, right? Because Promethium was always built from architectural perspective to incorporate security, right? So you can actually have a metadata layer, right, which is a Promethium scope in the cloud, and a data access layer, which is the intelligent edge. And that's where all the data access and the queries happen. And this is where you can actually incorporate the LLM, right? So this way you get to use your specific LLM account that you want to pick. So you have choice there, but also this way, if you wanted to, again, it's an option. If you wanted to share more data with your LLM, you can, and it's totally up to you. It's not something that Promethium forces upon you. However, I will say that one of our strengths in Promethium is we don't require you to share data. You can do it through using metadata. And then the metadata will then orchestrate with Promethium to actually execute the data access. So it becomes a much safer experience, right? So here's how it would work, right? The user would ask a question in natural language, right? We will parse those words into tokens on the Promethium scope side, and we'll search those tokens, right, against our metadata index to see what we can find. And then we use our AI to determine the best available tokens based upon search results, relevance, popularity, usage, all those factors that we've determined in our model, right? And then we can give those tokens to the LLMs, right? So the LLMs at this point is only getting tokens. They're not getting any data whatsoever, right? And then the LLM returns a SQL. The SQL then is applied at the Promethium level. So the LLM never gets to even apply and execute because it can't. It's not a database, right? And so we then can execute the query if it's accurate. We always give the user a chance to edit, and then we can always see if it's accurate or not before it actually happens. So this becomes a much safer and secure way of actually leveraging generative AI while leveraging your catalog, right? So here's an example I want to show you guys of, getting generative AI to help the user get started. This is something we talked about in the panel, right? And so, how do you get generative AI to give you a warm start, right? Well, so in this example, I'm going to pick a table here, right? And you'll notice I have no annotations whatsoever. There's no descriptions for the column names. And some of these column names are kind of esoteric. I don't know what LEN means. I don't know what MER means, right? And so by clicking this one button called Add AI Descriptions here, you can actually just ask generative AI to help you generate the human meaningful column names. And look, a couple seconds, it's already done for you. So you now have this already done. And so you can use this ready to go. You can curate it as well. But the cool thing is this was done for you automatically. And so now this becomes part of your discovery, your search. And the other part of the AI is automatically showing you the insights, right? The visualization of, hey, what is it actually, what could you actually answer, right, with this particular, data set that you're looking at. So it saves you the time for a human to go and figure out how to plot and so forth. It just instantly applies, the logic from the AI to show you what this output could be. So this is, one application of being able to apply generative AI, right, in your data catalog for this. Let's talk about a customer use case where they were able to use, our approach of data discovery to solve something really impactful to them. And this is a retailer, right, a tire retailer, American Tire Distributors. And so for them, their challenge was, they were struggling, they were facing revenue challenges because they weren't able to fulfill orders in a lot of their stores. And they couldn't figure out why, because their CFO was pretty sure they bought enough tires, enough stock to be able to fulfill all the demand. But for some reason, they weren't able to fulfill the demand. So sales was being affected. And so they needed a way to say, hey, can I see all my inventory across all my distribution centers for all products? And that wasn't so easy, right? Because the inventory data was in SQL Server, but they needed a way to make sure that that matches. So they wanted to see, did that come from our right supplier? So the logistics data was all in BigQuery. And then they needed to see the sales orders. Well, that was all in Oracle, right? And then they use Snowflake to do their demand planning to forecast how much they should be buying. And so in addition to just seeing like what's out there, they needed to see, well, what do we forecast? And did this line up with what our suppliers gave us? And how did this line up with what actually got sold? And so you're trying to really do discovery across multiple sources, right? And so that became really difficult. And so it took a long time because that single view didn't exist. And to do that discovery, right, it's not just search, right? You also needed to build a single view, right? And so that was really hard to do, right? Because, that needed IT or someone to say, hey, I'm going to go and, typical data catalog challenge. Well, I found pieces of it here, but someone really needs to move the data into a central repo first and assemble it before we can do more discovery. Exactly the case here, right? It's they needed IT to go and move all the data from BigQuery, Oracle, SQL Server into Snowflake, write the custom ETL, write the custom SQL to create that view to be able to let people search. The problem is every single time it takes to do that, it takes 4 weeks or more. Sometimes the whole process would end up taking 3 or 4 months. And so they could only do this demand planning once a year. And so what they figured out was the challenge was they're planning once a year what they're going to buy and what they're going to allocate across every store. Well, that's the challenge, because if things change, they didn't have enough time to change their allocation, right? And so they were losing sales because their store owners just couldn't answer the customer's questions very quickly on like, what do you have in stock, right? And so what they really want is give me a single view, single pane of glass. Let me find the SKU number. Let's see where it is. Let me know if we order it and where we can find it. And that's where they turn to Promethium, where we can give them this single view of, hey, here's where all your distribution centers are. Here's what they have in each location by the different types of SKU, right? And here's what's actually being ordered versus what you have. And oh, by the way, some of these stores actually have more supplies than what they need. So could you reallocate the inventory from another store to be able to cover for you, right? So for example, hey, I might need winter tires in Boston, and I don't have any winter tires in Boston right now, but I noticed San Diego's got a bunch of winter tires that no one's buying. Can we quickly reallocate those? So this is the power of Promethium in terms of being able to combine that single catalog, right, with data virtualization to give you the right data access, with the AI to automatically assemble and put this data set together to quickly visualize and show you the impact. I think we talked about the detailed architecture a little bit, but basically, what Promethium does is really kind of reinvent the data catalog, right, into more of a data fabric framework where you take the catalog, which is the discovery, governance, metadata index here, right, and adding on top of it, right, that ability to assemble. So it's important to not just have data virtualization, right? You don't want to just blindly query data that's going to create a performance impact. Your architects, your DBAs, your folks on the IT team are not going to be happy. Your CFO is not going to be happy with cloud costs if you just blindly do that. And so you do need a way to assemble, to prep, to make sure you're limiting, what you're querying, or you're only querying what is the right view. And then being able to suggest with AI, right, what you should be querying, what you should be selecting, right? and then being able to then confirm that with the actual visualization that shows you this is actually what it looks like, right? And then using AI to explain to you, this is what your data means, right? This is what this chart means. And then how do you orchestrate this whole framework between the business and the data teams and the IT teams? So this is really kind of how we imagined the data catalog to work. And obviously with generative AI, it just became a lot more automated and a lot more advanced. So we've talked about this. Promethium is available both as an offering where you can install, the data access layer of the product in your intelligent edge in your own VPC, or you can actually consume it as a fully hosted SaaS version as well, right? And it's fully hosted multi-tenant environment as well. So there's a couple of options in which you can consume Promethium. I think that's, we could probably, I see some questions, so I want to make sure that I save some time for questions here. Okay. Yeah, so the question is the use of LLM to empower data catalog a feasible idea? It absolutely is a feasible idea, and we've already implemented it. And we do allow you to select your own LLM. You don't have to go with ChatGPT if you don't want to. But it is a very good idea, as I mentioned earlier, to automate a lot of the grunt work, right? Automatic tagging, automatic curation, or descriptions of the esoteric column names and table names. And gives you that warm start for people to then search against, and then they can say, hey, this isn't right. I'm going to go fix it, etc. Or I think I found it. Can you verify? So it absolutely is a great idea, and it should be incorporated. It is actually already incorporated. And then the next question: how do you overcome a challenge of gathering metadata to train the LLM model? Good question. So the way that Promethium has already been integrated is that the approach that we take is actually one question at a time. So within Promethium, you can, once we organize your data, we can group your data into semantic domains known as topics, right? You can have a finance domain or finance topic, or a marketing analytics domain, marketing topic. And within each topic is a specific set of data that you decided to add in there. And so when someone asks a question, you can ask them to specify a topic, or you can assign a topic to that. And based upon that, you would then feed just the relevant data for that domain, that topic, to your LLM to process the answer. The more times you do this, the smarter the LLM gets for that specific topic, and it'll remember that answer that it's helping you answer is specifically for that topic. Right? See, would it not, let's see, question, would it not need to be training on a smaller subset of document inside an organization? Yeah, so hopefully I answered that question, Priya, in terms of kind of our ability to kind of shrink it down in terms of isolating by domains and topics, as well as isolating by specific questions. And that is a very easy way that we can implement the product within Promethium already. Okay, there's a question. What is the effort in setting up context for searches? Great question. So the effort to create all the metadata, zero, right? In terms of the technical metadata, that's instantly created. And if you have any existing annotations from existing catalogs or in your existing data sources, that actually gets brought over into Promethium instantly as comments, as tags. So zero effort there as well. And then in terms of search, as you search, when you ask a question, Promethium will actually automatically take the words and automatically create tokens for those words to then search across. So we automate all that upfront, so that way you can get a nice out-of-box experience. The only effort comes when you want to fine tune, right? You say, hey, this is not right. I want to correct it because I didn't like the answer that I'm getting. That would be the only effort that is required. Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you at the Innovation Hub.